people start paying attention when you start putting a number to things.
To get that buyer to discover something that they didn't know prior to the interaction with the salesperson.
And the prospect kind of sits back and they kind of went, I haven't thought about it that way. And their head kind of goes to the side.
Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw. Hey everybody, welcome back. Mark McGraw here. Welcome to the Building Your Sales Engine show. I'm going to be with Josh Pitchford today, and we're going to talk about the ubiquitous finding value, selling value. What does that mean? And some concepts of how do we practically go do it. So with that, let's dive in. As always, if you're looking for one of the handouts, the notes from today, pop over to buildingyoursalesengine.com/giveaway, and you can go grab the show notes over there. Talk soon. Welcome back, everybody. It's Mark McGraw here on Building Your Sales Engine. I am sitting here with my good friend and colleague, Mr. Josh Pitchford.
Good to be back once again. I love doing this.
It's fun, isn't
it? It really is. Just it's good to record the stuff that we sit around and talk about all the time. So good stuff.
We were talking the other day about the fact that a lot of times people talk about bringing value to a client, and like we got to bring value to a client. And we were laughing at the fact that, well, what does that mean anyway? How do you do that? And it seems kind of squishy to me. So we were going to spend a few minutes here and share with folks some different ways that people can bring value to their clients and not just make it a phrase that somebody says, but make it reality.
That's a good way to put it. It's not just a phrase that you use, because I was sharing with you the other day, it's probably been 5 years that every now and then I'll ask somebody that I'm talking to, well, what does that mean to bring value? It's the squishiest, wishy-washy, subjective thing in the world that, I think everybody in their own way at certain times brings value. But how do you do that for clients, customers, prospects, all these folks? It's just such a broad term that I think it just loses its value.
Ironic,
right? To bring value. What does that mean? So we thought we'd just chat through it. I love it.
So why don't you kick us off, Josh? Give us something that you think that brings value. How does a salesperson who wants to be consultative and advisory and all of the above with either a prospect or a client, how do they go about, quote, bringing value? Give us a thought.
I would go, my first thing that I've come to realize is respecting the Sandler rule, no mind reading. Bringing value is different for every person, so we have to ask. One of the places that we can probably talk through a little bit more is, Sandler pain funnel. We quantify. One of the things I always talk about is, if you're talking to a group of decision makers in the sales process and you're using Sandler, right? Sandler pain funnel. If you're not familiar with it, look it up. There's surface level pain, quantified pain, personal impact pain. Those are the 3 levels. Okay. And how this relates to value is that a group of decision makers, stakeholders may share the same surface level pain. They see the issue that they are engaging with you to discuss. They may quantify it massively differently. And certainly their personal impact or personal attachment to that issue may be far different based on where they are.
What role they have.
What their
CFO
role is.
is going to have a different impact than a marketing person.
So guess what? Your value that you bring to that particular person in the buying side, on the buying side as a seller, may be far different. So we have to ask, we have to understand, what do they care about, and think about, okay, what would be valuable to them through this? And so I think it's so very personal, whatever bringing value means. It's not bringing value on a broad scale, it's bringing value personally.
And I think to your point, there's an expression that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? And I think you can substitute the word value for beauty, and you say value is in the eye of the beholder. And it's way too easy for us as salespeople to go in And we think we know what the person needs, and we've been through training for the product, and we want to tell them what value that they should receive. And yet they're right in front of us. We could ask, to your point, we could find out what's important to them. So clearly there's one element right there. You just brought another thing up too, which I hadn't thought about at all, which was understanding the quantification of the problem. Sometimes the buyer, I'll use that name generically, the buyer doesn't understand what the impacts are of the problem that they're coming to the seller to fix.
Absolutely. They may now, through good questioning and understanding on the seller side of things, be able to actually put a number to the value.
Yeah.
And it becomes much more objective than that subjective, bringing value to them. You start putting some objectivity. And one of the things I always talk about when I'm training this stuff is people start paying attention when you start putting a number to things.
They do.
And so when numbers are involved, they pay attention, and there's something much more concrete rather than, I kind of like them, whatever, kind of like this stuff. Like, no, there's tremendous value because they can see the numbers, and they see that, the saying around people want to be heard and understood. I believe when you understand them, they feel like they're getting tremendous value from the conversation, and you get it. You get them, get their challenge, get their problem, and that brings value in and of itself.
And sometimes I see that these people that we as salespeople are talking to, that buyer needs to justify the purchase, or they need to make recommendations internally to go get budget. And that quantification of it, which that buyer may not have thought about what the impacts are to the organization, that helps the buyer actually make the business case internally to make sure that the funds are there to go do it if that's it, or to if they're going to switch from an incumbent and that incumbent has caused grief, they have a dollar amount on what that impact of that incumbent has caused on the company, and that will help the buyer then justify the decision.
Absolutely. That's bringing value to that buyer, is that they have to justify it internally. Somebody questions an additional spend. Maybe your solution's a little bit more than their incumbent, and they've got to justify it. Well, that's valuable to them, the fact that you've had a quantification conversation to justify it. And so I hope some of this conversation is like taking that squishiness of bringing value to put a number to it in specific ways people can do it.
And we do that by asking questions. I think in some respects, we can bring value as sellers by telling people things and educating them about our products and services. But really a much better way to do it is to get that buyer to discover something that they didn't know prior to the interaction with the salesperson. That to me is a great source of, it's in the questions that you ask that brings value more so than the knowledge that we have that we give.
Yeah, it's creating the Scooby moment.
What do you mean?
The Scooby-Doo moment, when you ask that question, and any of us that have been in sales for a while, and if you haven't experienced this yet, it's coming soon, that you ask a really good question in the middle of a sales call, and the prospect kind of sits back and they kind of went, I haven't thought about it that way. And their head kind of goes to the side. You've created the Scooby-Doo moment. You own them at this point because you've brought tremendous value just by making them consider something differently than they had thought about coming in. And that alone makes you stick in their head.
And so when you help somebody to discover something that they didn't know, you ask them a question that they had never thought of before. That's bringing value.
Absolutely. A new perspective is value. It's everything, and that's what makes it so subjective, is that it's everything that makes it easier on your buyer or other people in your life to appreciate what you're giving them.
Yeah.
And it's in their eyes, and they love it. And where we fall flat, you touched on it a moment ago, is thinking that we know best. And we come in talking about our product or service and pitching things rather than asking them, what do they value? And we go back to, an upfront contract inside of Sandler. What are 2 or 3 things you want to make sure we cover to make this a good use of your time? In the upfront contract, well, just the fact that we're not a self-centered seller, that we actually want to hear from them.
10 times fast.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to. A self-centered seller.
Ooh, well done.
That's twice. That then, we're not solely focused on our product or service. We want to understand them and be able to see if, number one, does our solution even fit what they're looking for? And number two, it allows us to position it so that it best fits what they're looking for, if there's a possible fit there.
Yeah, I like it. And I think for the fact, I mean, it's a question a lot of people miss, and it's basic, but just asking the question, what's most important for you to get out of this meeting? What do you need to get out of this meeting? Mm-hmm. And it's part of the upfront contract that we coach and train. And it's on the surface, it's like, well, of course we ask that. And yet, you kind of wonder, out of 10 salespeople that are on 10 sales calls that are not coached and trained by us, not to be arrogant, but it's an easy question to miss because we're so focused as sellers on getting to our agenda that we miss finding out. And that actually is insight into what the person values on their side. Think about doing a demo, and if somebody's doing a software demo. Every question that buyer asks or that prospect asks in the demo is potential value in what the seller could provide. And we need to understand that before we dive into the details and the like.
It's insight into what they value. If we go into the mindset that pretty much every question that a buyer asks in a sales call has probably got pain focused. There's pain behind it, either avoidance of pain in the future or something they have going on now. What's the motivation? Pausing and taking a minute and truly understanding them is hugely valuable. So what's some things on your list there, Mark? I'm
thinking about stuff like, I think people that really bring value, they're simplifiers. They're people, a good salesperson can take something that's complex and they can get down to the root cause of something through their experience and knowledge and wisdom and insight. And they take complex issues and simplify them. That to me brings value. Because the buyer a lot of times is in this torment, it's almost like they're in the middle of a storm sometimes of the issues that they're going through, and they don't have the perspective that the seller has.
No doubt.
Okay. And as a result of that, I think they can simplify. The seller can take a complex issue, simplify it, and then repackage it to the buyer. And that brings value then back to the buyer on that side.
Oh, that's a great point. I hadn't even thought about it that way. But being able to simplify things and, not assuming, because this is something we run into as sellers, right? Is not assuming that this deal is like the last one you worked on, that it's very similar. We run into a lot of the same issues and challenges over and over and over again. But being able to use those third-party stories and frame it in the right way to simplify, is this what I'm hearing from you? And be able to concisely listen to them like, yes, that's what I was trying to say, but you just put it much more concisely as a seller to be able to check the box of things that are part of a possible solution. All of a sudden you've simplified it, and you also add velocity to your sales process when you start simplifying things.
Yeah, confusion creates delays.
No doubt. I mean, you don't go fly. If you don't know where you're going, you're probably not going very fast down a road.
You don't have the confidence to
so
hit the accelerator.
Exactly. Your buyer's not going to do that either. They're not going to run enthusiastically in what they feel like it's the wrong direction. Yeah. And when we can simplify it, it makes it a lot easier.
You touched on another one, Josh, too, and that is that the seller, to me, has a lot of value in what they bring, and that they have experience that they're calling on other similar companies, there are other industries or other people. So they get the best practices experience where they can see evidence in another operation where they do something in a different way. And I think a lot of times sellers undervalue that knowledge that they have for the fact that they meet with a lot of, the buyer's not necessarily meeting with all of these other companies that do what they do. Sometimes they're competitors even, but the seller does. And that insight in bringing best practices, not that they're sharing confidential information per se,
sure,
but they're certainly providing insight in terms of industry best practices that buyer may not recognize without the seller being there.
No doubt. And then there's also the other side of it. For everything you do, get something of equal or greater value in return. Stay on the rules. For everything you do, get something of equal or greater value in return. that word value pops up again, and sellers have a tremendous amount of value to bring, even in the, the post-internet world where, buyers are more informed than they've ever been. Well, sellers still have those things like industry insights, best practices, third-party stories. Buyers are still looking for those, but that value should also give the seller the ability to get more insight from their buyer on things that they can ask for, clear next steps, access to other decision makers, all the stuff that comes up from time to time. So want to remember that side of it too, that we have a tremendous amount of value in our heads to give them.
I love the Sandler rule. There's so many that I love, but I love the Sandler rule. Your value as a salesperson is more dependent upon the information you gather than by what you dispense.
Sure.
And in that sense, certainly the more questions we ask, the more things that we do, and also getting things in exchange positions. Just think about this. If we have kids and we give our kids something and they don't have to earn it because it's just given to them, they never value it as much as when they have to pay for it. And so that's true also of a salesperson when they're charging, and I'm using air quotes, but when they're charging, if you will, the buyer for the information that they're giving, because they're asking for something in exchange, that seller appreciates the wisdom and insight from the seller that much more. The buyer appreciates the wisdom and insight from the seller that much more because they're paying for it.
Strike the word appreciates. They value it.
Yeah, they value it.
To go back to what we're talking about here, they value it because there's some sort of investment. Right, they're putting something out there as well. They got some skin in the game, so to speak. So absolutely, we just got to remember how much value we can bring, and make sure we're getting value as well. And it goes back and forth.
It's give and get for sure.
It certainly is.
Do you have some others that you were thinking of?
I've kind of touched on a lot of this, but I want to remember those that may be listening out here is that when you have longer term relationships too, you got to learn to pay attention. And I was listening to a TikTok the other day. Imagine that.
Greatest source of information in the world right now.
It's not
AI. It's TikTok.
It's TikTok. Yeah.
Not true, by the way.
And this guy, and I can't quote it perfectly because I can't remember who said it. But he said he has a PhD in this relationship that he's talking about. And I think those that are in sales positions that you have ongoing relationships and that's most of the folks that we're talking to, that they're not just go in, sell it and leave. That's not transactional. Most of the people that are going to be listening to this are much more consultative and collaborative type sellers. They got to pay attention.
Yeah.
Use that notes field, that personal notes field in your CRM. Pay attention to people. Get a PhD in your clients. And that's hugely valuable when you remember stuff or you actually, build on your knowledge of them and don't have to go hit the reset button every time. You're constantly building on that knowledge base of different things about your buyer, different things about their company, whatever it happens to be. Pay attention.
Changes in their organization. I could certainly see, hey, how's that new org change that you went through?
Exactly.
Tell me what's going on over there. Could be personal stuff if they've got a trip on the relationship side. There's a tried and true of in terms of talking about family and kids and all those things.
Sure.
I think there's a certain amount of value. I know for one, and I don't know that everybody deals with this, but I know for one, I have more than once, I feel like brought value to somebody through talking through, a career decisions that they're making as far as whether they take a sales management job and leave sales. That's bringing value to a current client. And so I realize maybe not everybody can do that, but
sure.
I think a lot of times when you get to know somebody well, as an existing client, you get to see things that they can't see. I mean, we've got an expression that says you can't read the label from inside of the jar. And that's true. A lot of times when they are involved in these things, they can't see things that you can, and you can bring those items up and help them recognize something that's not necessarily obvious to them.
That's so funny you bring that up because I've talked about it before, and I was actually on a coaching call yesterday with a sales leader with one of the companies I'm working with, and he brought up something that I do all the time. He said, I really found that as you get to know your clients and you get to know your customers, you know that you've got a different level of relationship with them when they're asking you about your perspective on things that have nothing to do with your working to relationship.
Yeah.
And you and I, granted, we're in a role that we get pulled into those kind of conversations. People appreciate that perspective. But really pay attention is, regardless what your role is, if people are asking you about that, that means they really value your perspective. And that's really what a lot of the time sellers being asked on, like, what do you think about this? And that's where you start getting other people's quotes and proposals, and those you get to take a look at those. Is when you've really paid attention, you've really been valuable to somebody over the course of time.
That they trust your judgment even outside of your initial area of expertise. If you're great at product X,
right,
they trust your judgment about things that are related to that, not only just that. That's a great place to be.
They trust your judgment.
Yeah.
And you've proven that by the conversations you've had, the paying attention, the asking of the questions. All of that stuff is just built up over the course of time, that they trust your judgment. Great way to put it.
You mentioned a minute ago relationships. And one of them I was thinking about in terms of bringing value is introductions and referrals.
Absolutely.
And, let's say a seller could introduce the buyer to someone. Maybe here's an example. This happened to me just yesterday or the day before. People admire our tech setup. We got good gear. We have a resource that has been phenomenal in helping us go get all of our stuff together. Because there's a difference between buying the part number of the mic and actually making it work seamlessly and efficient. Those are two different things. And so if we can do introductions to someone where we really get no benefit out of it, that's a great way to bring value to somebody, is to help solve a problem through connections and bringing people together.
It's the old saying, I got a guy, right? And I'm using that very loosely, but we definitely have a guy.
We definitely have a guy
that you're referring to right now.
Ironically, his name is Mike, which is,
and he's really good with mics. No pun. Pun very much intended. But no, when you can have that awareness, and people have heard this time and time again, that, referrals and warm introductions, got to give to get. Start having that awareness that, if you hear somebody's having a problem and you have a who that you can introduce them to, you got to pull that trigger and, solve it for them. And it's even more impactful. Like you said, there's no potential upside for you. You're just trying to be helpful. It's hugely valuable to people, and they will come back and remember it.
The word that jumps to my mind is to serve that person.
Serve.
You are thinking about that in the totality of that person and their roles, and both personally and professionally. How do you best serve them? And that's, again, how do you bring value to them? That's another way yet to go do that. So it's a cool list. Any other thoughts that you have in terms of thinking through this conceptual thing of how do we bring value to something? We got to bring value. So, we've unpacked quite a few different ideas.
Mm-hmm. My last one is be prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think people do so much, and I think it goes back to your comment about, we need to go in thinking about what do we want them to discover versus what do we want to tell them.
That's great.
And if a seller goes into a sales call, a meeting with a customer, whatever, pause for just a minute and think about do I need to have my leave behind ready? How pretty is the PowerPoint deck? All that stuff. That's great and wonderful. But what are they going to be able? What will they value? Why? If you put yourself and have some empathy for the person on the other side of the table going in, saying, if I was sitting in their chair, what would I want to see, hear, get a feel for over the course of this hour together that would be valuable to them? What insights, third-party stories, all that stuff. Take just a moment, because it's difficult to do it in the moment because we get emotionally involved and in the conversation. Give a little thought about it for prior to it. It's a little pre-call planning.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are ready for it, those opportunities are so much more apparent when you've thought about it previously. So, prep for it. Prep to bring value to people.
I mean, at the end of the day, be a pro. And that means preparation. It means having relationships that you have in the industry that you can connect people to. It means paying attention to your point earlier and being aware of the circumstances and not making it all about you all the time in terms of your product and what you have to, quote, sell. But great salespeople really are wonderful problem solvers and problem identifiers, specifically, sometimes in things that the buyer never knew they had an issue with.
Absolutely.
And that's truly bringing value. So excellent. Great conversation with you as always. And I do look forward to the next time we get together, which I'm sure will not be too long from now.
No doubt. Thanks for inviting me in. Appreciate
Always.
it.
Thanks. So, hey, I hope you've gotten a ton of value out of this episode. By far, it's our purpose to help people make money and have fun and have a good time. We're here to help improve your life, to help you make it easier to go sell or to manage your sales team, and ultimately to go build your own sales engine. Don't miss an episode. The best way to go do that is to make sure that you jump out to buildingyoursalesengine.com/follow, where you can link up to all of our latest episodes. For more information about this episode, go to buildingyoursalesengine.com, where you can download show notes, transcripts, and other information, including handouts, snapshots of this and other episodes. If you'd like to connect with us to talk about how we can help you build your sales engine, and you are either located in the state of Georgia or are referred to us by one of our clients or affiliated by one of our clients, please reach out to us at buildingyoursalesengine.com, where you can click there to book some time with us. We can find out how we can be of help with one another. If you're not in either of those two circumstances, please reach out to Sandler.com, where you can find a Sandler office near you. Be well.